A Couple of Cucks, I made the funny AniTuber joke, is, and now I know I've said this before, quite possibly the worst anime I've seen this season. I went in wanting to like this, but I just hated it for the most part. The two leads are mixed up at birth at the hospital, yet the parents never even realize it until 16 years later, which is downright awful parenting, but then all the parents in the show are portrayed as good people, and in general are very likable characters, so already there's this immediate disconnect in the show where this plot point wasn't well thought out at all, and they just wanted a reason for the two leads to be tangentially related, and for the main character and his not sister Sachi to be related but not really, which is a total cop-out because back in my day, the anime siblings were blood related and they Sachi obviously isn't going to win, so going out of its way to have the MC not actually be related to her is already trying to avoid and separate itself from the trash that it should be embracing. That's right, whereas Trapped in a Dating Sim openly accepts its trashy nature wholeheartedly, this show actively avoids it despite its premise and the way it set itself up leaning so heavily into it. It's almost like the author knew being trashy would sell, but they didn't actually want to write that, and so the entire anime consistently clashes with itself, where in some scenes you have these nice family moments that explore getting to know your birth parents and bonding with them, and then in other scenes you have Pink dressing like a slutty nurse, being a thotty e-girl, and Sachi openly wanting to fuck her brother. God, I wish they'd laugh at me like that. It doesn't help that it just shamelessly rips off the better anime Nisekoi in the worst ways possible, like having a love rectangle for no other reason than to just have one. All the girls are significantly uglier than the ones in Nisekoi, the art and animation are uninspired in comparison to what Shaft produced for Nisekoi, and the comedy is practically non-existent outside of a few scenes. They even make jokes and references to Nisekoi, so it doesn't even really try to hide it, but honestly, its worst offense is in trying to copy the harem aspect from Nisekoi. On the surface, you'd think setting up a harem anime would be easy, but apparently this anime didn't get the memo. It tries to have the same harem setup that Nisekoi did, with the main character being forced into one relationship, him liking someone completely different, and then a third girl who's just involved for shits and giggles, except for this time it's a sister, but it's flawed. In Nisekoi, the entire harem only existed because of a childhood promise that the main character made with the girl who had a key to his locket. This meant that multiple girls, in addition to Onodera, who he already liked, could potentially fill that role. Here, however, it's just the main character going, "What? Be rich with a hot girl and unite both our families to make everyone happy simply by fucking her? Why, I could never! I must pretend that I instead like this purple-haired girl who doesn't even know who I am until about episode 49, where I end up going with the pink girl anyways after wasting everyone's time." It's really dumb and contrived, and the characters are practically non-existent. The main character has his moments, but overall he's very plain and boring in both looks and personality because the viewer needs to be able to self-insert into him. And purple literally just exists to make it a harem. All the girls do seem to have a confidence issue in some way or another, like for example needing validation from the internet in Pink's case, or trying to be number one in Purple's case, but outside of that they have next to no character and very little motivations. Pink does get the most screen time and development because it's obviously supposed to be a family drama rom-com where Sachi only exists to explore both family aspect and stir up drama, but Purple gets very little and all her scenes are snooze-worthy and just put me right to sleep. It would at least be bearable if it had good comedy, which as you can see is rather funny, but the jokes are few and far between, and it instead seems focused on wanting to explore what it's like to be separated at birth and getting to know the family that you never knew. But it knows that doesn't sell, so it doesn't go all in with it to make it worthwhile to watch, and instead it just montages those moments or spends very little time on them, and then spends the rest of the time with girls like Purple who you could give less of a shit about because the show barely cares about her itself, all the while shoving in lewd shots and suggestive scenes while teasing at other girls because the author knows that's what gets people to watch. Like calling Spy X Family bad. If this was a family drama with romance spliced into it like it so clearly wants to be, then it'd be a pretty solid show because it has so far handled those scenes exceedingly well, and all it would have to do to achieve this is to remove Purple and keep the same premise of them being forced into a marriage, but instead exploring what it's like to be separated at birth as they slowly come to understand and get to know their original parents and each other, falling for each other all the while, and using Sachi for any potential drama needs, or even exploring how the parents didn't realize that they somehow had the wrong child for 16 years for even more drama. But instead it opts to not do that and instead just be a forced and boring harem, one that isn't even the fun and trashy kind, just boring. But I will say that although the art and animation are bog standard, both were improved in episode 3, and in general that episode was much more enjoyable than the previous two and was an overall improvement, what with there being more comedy spliced in while also having more of the two leads bonding. It does switch over to Purple halfway through that same episode and kind of ruin what it had going for it, but it's not complete shit is my point, and it's showing signs of improvement. So if you really like harems and shit shows like I do, don't judge me, I like titties, opportunities and believe that it'll continue to improve over the next 20 episodes, then give it a shot. If not, then go ahead and give this anime a shot.